and bring you back a determination. So unless it's a really serious breach of the standing orders, let's restrain ourselves from raising unhelpful points of order.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for that guidance. And Honorable Speaker, I was at a point where I was saying that the current mess that we are witnessing, Honorable Speaker, on this issue is occasioned by the definitions of the words coalition and coalition political party. And Honorable Speaker, for clarity, I wanted to read the definitions as they exist in the Act. That a coalition means an alliance of two or more political parties formed for the purpose of pursuing a common goal and is governed by a written agreement deposited with the registrar. Honorable Speaker, it is worthwhile to note that Kenya Kwanza coalition is a coalition pursuant to that definition. And therefore, it is a coalition of political parties that are governed by a written agreement, Honorable Speaker, which I shall be tabling. We do have a number of coalition agreements that are agreed upon that were signed, Honorable Speaker, and I'll be tabling the coalition agreement between Kenya Kwanza, the parties UDA, the founding parties UDA, ANC, Ford Kenya, Honorable Speaker, and further agreements with the Umoja na Maendeleo Party. I will also be tabling a coalition agreement between Kenya Kwanza and Tujibebe wa Kenya Party, a further agreement with the Service Party of Kenya, another agreement, Honorable Speaker, with the Pamoja Alliance, Pamoja African Alliance, PA, a further agreement, Honorable Speaker, with the Maendeleo Chap Party. I shall also be tabling, Honorable Speaker, for your ease of perusal, an agreement between the founding parties of Kenya Kwanza and the Farmers Party, another one with the Economic Freedom Party, Honorable Speaker, another one with the Devolution Party of Kenya, one with the Democratic Party of Kenya, Honorable Speaker, the Communist Party of Kenya and Kenya Kwanza Alliance founding parties, Chama cha Kazi, Honorable Speaker, the Democratic Party of Kenya, Honorable Speaker. I will also table one from the National Agenda Party of Kenya, the Grand Dream Development Party, led by our friend and colleague, the Honorable Fabian Muli, and the coalition, post-election coalition agreement between GDDP, post-election, Honorable Speaker, between GDDP and Kenya Kwanza, a post-election coalition agreement between the United Democratic Movement UDM, and Kenya Kwanza, a post-election coalition agreement between MDG, the Movement for Democracy and Growth, led by our brother and colleague, the Honorable David Ochieng. Honorable Speaker, all these coalitions are to bear witness, Honorable Speaker, that indeed Kenya Kwanza is a coalition of political parties as per the definition of the Act, Honorable Speaker. The second definition, Honorable Speaker, is one of a coalition political party. And the Act tells us that this means a coalition registered by the registrar as a political party. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I would beg, Honorable Speaker, and I want to challenge my colleague, the Honorable Junet Mohammed, and the Honorable Opio and I, who you call my protagonist, but is actually my very good friend, Honorable Speaker. They are here contending to be leading the majority. Honorable Speaker, the question of determining a majority is very easy, because it's just a question of calculating the numbers of parliamentary political parties. And the definition of a parliamentary political party is in this standing order number 20. Honorable Speaker, we must then ask ourselves the question, is the Azimio One Kenya Alliance Coalition political party a party? Is it a parliamentary political party? And the straight answer, Honorable Speaker, is that Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party does not exist as a parliamentary political party. Honorable Speaker, but that does not mean that the constituent parties that came together to form Azimio One Kenya Alliance political party are not parties in their own right. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, with all due respect to the other parties, and indeed, Honorable Speaker, you have also in your communication alluded to the fact that Jubilee Party, my former party, has also written to you communicating their leadership in this House, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, what does that tell you? That Jubilee Party appreciates that Azimio One Kenya Coalition political party does not exist in this House, either as a parliamentary political party or as a coalition of political parties, as per the definition in Article 108 and Standing Order number 19, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, that then would mean that ODM, and I want to believe besides KANU, ODM is the oldest political party in this country, with slightly above 80 members of parliament, is then the second largest political party after the Kenya Kwanza coalition of political parties, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, and I don't say this to belittle all the other partners in Azimio One Kenya Alliance, Honorable Speaker, but that is what we created in the mess that was the political parties amendment bill that was debated in this House, Honorable Speaker, over the Christmas recess in December of 2021 and completed in January of this year, Honorable Speaker. I remember, Honorable Speaker, standing in my place somewhere behind here, reminding our colleagues that this law that you have just passed will punish you more than it will ever punish me or those of us that were then called the Tangatanga or UDA Brigade, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, chickens have come home to roost. Nobody is being punished, but we are paying for that acrimonious debate and a law that was procured in this assembly in a manner that we should never, ever engage in procuring or in legislating. We are a house that legislates through consultation. We never consulted each other as we passed that law, Honorable Speaker. And it is sad. And I pray, Honorable Speaker, that this 13th Assembly will not take the route and will never take the route that the 12th Assembly took. We must be a house that consults. I am glad, Honorable Speaker, that we sit here with my brother, Honorable Pio Wandai, and my brother, Honorable Jonette, as colleagues in one house, listening to each other and debating, because this is a house of debate, Honorable Speaker. And we must gain the respect and the dignity that we are accorded by the Kenyan people who have elected us by coming to this house, listening to each other and debating. Honorable Speaker, I want to submit, Honorable Speaker, that besides the agreements, Honorable Speaker, that we are tabling, when I say that Azimio One Kenya Alliance, One Kenya Coalition Party, is not a parliamentary political party, it is because the definition as contained in our standing orders stipulates that you must have at least 5% of the members of the National Assembly to be a parliamentary political party. Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party has not a single member of parliament. Indeed, Honorable Speaker, in a case that was filed by Dhuranira and 4 others versus the Attorney General and 2 others, including the Registrar of Political Parties and 3 others as interested parties, Honorable Speaker, the High Court allowed the constituent parties in Azimio One Kenya to field individual party candidates, and that is what they did. That is why we have 26 parties represented in this House, including ODM, Jubilee, Wiper, UDA, ANC, Ford Kenya, and all our other parties. Honorable Speaker, by Gazette notice that was published on the 1st of July 2022, Honorable Speaker, this is the schedule that published all the people who are nominated to run for either president or parliamentary seats. Honorable Speaker, I'll be tabling this Gazette notice. There was only one candidate who ran for the office of President of Kenya, the Honorable Odinga Raila Karua Martha Wangari, who ran as a Azimio One, La Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party candidates with the emblem and symbols of the Azimio One Kenya political party. That party has no representation in this House. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, we only need to ask ourselves if Azimio One Kenya Alliance political party is not represented in this House, and the leader of that alliance is not in this House, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, it is only natural that the coalition with the largest number of members in this house being the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, naturally, the leader of majority and the majority party then is the leader that leads that coalition. And that is yours faithfully, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we must also ask ourselves, because I have seen it in the media, Honorable Speaker, and without even quoting Honorable Speaker, you're also being asked to rule on issues that touch on individual and corporate political rights. Because parties belong to people. They are managed by people, and they harbor people. And those people and those parties as corporate entities enjoy political rights in line with Article 38 of our Constitution, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, you do know that Article 36 of our Constitution, Honorable Speaker, also guarantees us certain rights that are not, that cannot be taken away, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, you must ask yourself, Honorable Speaker, and we must ask ourselves, because the contention, Honorable Speaker, relates to a few of us, especially those members who belong to UDM who are sitting here, members who belong to MDG, like my brother David Ochieng, who is sitting here, members who belong to the Maendeleo Chap, members who belong to the Pamoja African Alliance, PA, and they're in this house, Honorable Speaker. Can you, as Speaker, because that is a question we are asking you to make a determination on, can you, as Speaker, ignore their fundamental right to the freedom to association, to be able to associate or coalesce with anybody that they want to coalesce with, as individuals and as political parties? Can that right be taken away, Honorable Speaker, by Clause 22 of the Azimio Agreement? And Honorable Speaker, I will dare challenge my brothers in the Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party. I have tabled coalition agreements between parties that assented to the Kenya Kwanza Alliance. I dare you, table the Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party agreements that are signed by any of these political parties. And I would dare you to table that agreement. Because it is also in contention, Honorable Speaker, as to how those agreements were procured, Honorable Speaker. We have heard harrowing stories of how people were coerced under the last regime to sign blank pieces of paper with just your party name on a dotted line on one piece of paper, Honorable Speaker, not knowing what you are signing for, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I know you have been a senior member of the legal profession, and I do not want to pretend to be one. But at least I did study a little bit of the law of contract as I started for my CPA with the Honorable John Buddy, although I was slightly ahead of him. Honorable Speaker, the Honorable John Buddy might be slightly older than me, but I was slightly ahead of him in the profession. I qualified as a CPA when I was in my first year at the University of Nairobi. Honorable Speaker, I was saying, in the law of contract, you know any agreement that is obtained either under duress or with the concealment of material facts, that agreement cannot stand in law. Therefore, our brothers in the One Kenya Coalition, I am sorry, and I am sorry to you, and I am sorry to the Kenyan people, because we created this mess right on this floor. And that is why I appeal, as I conclude, Honorable Speaker, to our colleagues. This issue, Honorable Speaker, we are confident that you'll be able to make a ruling on it, Honorable Speaker. But as we begin this 13th assembly, I dare say we must never get back to where we got to in the 12th Parliament, Honorable Speaker. We never consulted each other as we made a mess out of the political parties that govern and guide the growth of our democracy. This particular law, as was passed, Honorable Speaker, I said then that it would not only punish us and punish those who are vehemently supporting it, and punish you more than it would punish those who are vehemently opposing it, but it was a dangerous law for the governance of our country and the growth of our democracy, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to submit, Honorable Speaker, that my colleagues in the Azimio One Kenya Alliance, Honorable Speaker, do know they do not have the numbers. They know the Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, former member of Ndaragwa, as Secretary General of Jubilee, has written to you, Honorable Speaker, as the Secretary General of Jubilee, communicating their leadership in this House. They do know, Honorable Speaker, that the Azimio One Kenya coalition party does not exist in this House. Indeed, Honorable Speaker, I must commend ODM because they have been magnanimous to share positions with Jubilee and even with their brothers in Wiper. I must commend ODM as the oldest political party because ODM is the second largest political party, and that ought to be the leader, the party in the minority, and the Honorable Pio Andai ought to be the leader of minority leading the ODM brigade in this House. And the Honorable Junet can whip the ODM members.
Your time is up.
Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Andai.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. And this being my first time to speak in the 13th Parliament, Mr. Speaker, allow me to take this opportunity to first and foremost congratulate you on your election as the Speaker of the 13th National Assembly. And also to congratulate my colleagues who have made it to this House this time round. Mr. Speaker, I am indeed pleased to note that you have repeatedly said since your election that you will be the Speaker of the whole House, in spite, of course, of the fact that my coalition did have a candidate against you. Mr. Speaker, I also recognize that you have got immense experience as a parliamentarian, and you are also a distinguished legal practitioner, spanning very many years. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you that when I was growing up, I came to learn that you, as a young lawyer then, young advocate, was bold enough to come out and defend some of the victims of the 1982 coup attempt. That goes to say, really, the kind of person you are. And therefore, this House, I believe, stands to benefit immensely from your wise counsel and your very rich experience. But coming back to the issue at hand, Mr. Speaker, I want us to take note of the fact that the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya 2010 makes it at Article 3, Sub-Article 1, an obligation for every single person to respect, uphold, and defend the Constitution. That responsibility, that obligation is even more so pertinent for some of us who have taken oath of office to defend that Constitution. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've been listening very keenly to my friend and compatriot, the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. But let me take you to Article 259 of the Constitution. Article 259 of the Constitution requires that as we interpret the Constitution, we do so in a manner that promotes its purposes. Allow me to just take you through it. That this Constitution shall be interpreted in a manner that, among others, promotes its purposes, values, and principles, and also in a manner that contributes to good governance. What I mean to say, Mr. Speaker, is that you need to undertake a holistic reading of the Constitution for you to arrive at any particular conclusion or determination. Selective reading of the Constitution, or any law for that matter really, may not be helpful in examining a matter of significance such as the one that we are faced with this afternoon. Mr. Speaker, Article 108 has been spoken to by my colleague, the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. And there's no doubt indeed that under Article 108, both Part 1 and 2, the leader of majority party shall be the person who is the leader of the National Assembly of the largest party or coalition of parties. Mr. Speaker, standing orders of the National Assembly. In fact, those of us who are privileged to be in this House in the 12th Parliament will recall that we did make some amendments towards the end of that House. So, Speaker, the Standing Order number 1 provides, and I want to read, that in all cases where matters are not expressly provided for by these standing orders or by the orders of the House, any procedural question shall be decided by the Speaker. But it goes on to say at Part 2, and this is very important, that the decisions made in paragraph 1 shall be based on the Constitution of Kenya, statute law, and I dare say in this case, the Political Parties Act of 2011, as amended severally, including the amendment of 2022. Statute law and usages, forms, precedents, customs, procedures, traditions, and practices of the Parliament of Kenya and other jurisdictions to the extent that these are applicable to Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we have come to a point where we seem to be asking you to make a decision, to make a determination on a matter that is so well provided for, so expressly provided for by not only the Constitution, the Political Parties Act, but also by our own standing orders. And let me take you to standing order number 2B. Yes, standing order number 2B, Mr. Speaker. And I will read for avoidance of doubt. Clerk to obtain coalition agreements. That is the title or the subtitle of that particular standing order. And members, listen carefully. It says, at 2B, that the clerk shall obtain from the registrar of political parties a certified copy of any coalition agreement entered into by the two or more parties in the National Assembly for purposes of ascertaining the relative majorities in the House and facilitating the transaction of the business of the House. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to this particular standing order, I dare say, the acting clerk of the National Assembly, and I must commend her for her diligence, the acting clerk of the National Assembly on the 2nd of September 2022 did write to the registrar of political parties seeking this information. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, the registrar duly responded to her letter on the 7th of September 2022. The registrar of political parties wrote to the clerk of the National Assembly. And I want to read excerpts of that letter. Mr. Speaker, if I could be allowed to continue.
Mr. Speaker, just I don't want to correct my former chairman of Public Accounts Committee, but before he leaves Standing Order 2B, Speaker, just like Honorable Chungwa, can he first table the Azimio agreement as provided and certified by the registrar of political parties?
Can I continue?
Yes. Give him the mic.
So, Speaker, because, why am I saying so? Speaker, Standing Order 2B, as correctly read by the Honorable Opio Wandai, is very specific. It says the clerk of the National Assembly will write to the registrar of political parties, one Ann Deritu, asking the National Assembly to be provided with. So, Mr. Speaker, the basis of our argument is not about the letter. It's about the coalition agreement. We have seen Kenya Kwanza. Can we get the one for Azimio?
Honorable members, that is a line of argument that you can pursue, and I'll give you an opportunity.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for protecting me from my friend and senior in the House, Honorable Dwali. In the course of my submissions, I will be educating him a little bit on matters law. Mr. Speaker, I was saying that on the 7th of September, the registrar of political parties did write back to the clerk of the National Assembly. And she said, request for information on coalition agreements. Request for information on coalition agreements. Reference is made to the above subject matter, and your letter dated 2nd September 2022, whose content is duly noted. Pursuant to Section 10 of the Political Parties Act 2011, as read together with the Regulation 21 of the Political Parties Registration Regulations 2019, and in line with your request, the constituent political parties of coalitions and effective dates are as listed below. 1. Coalition name, Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party. Listen, just listen. Constituent parties, Jubilee, ODM, Wiper, KANU, NAC. You can say no, but I'm telling you what is what is here. Yes. You will continue shouting no, but that won't make a difference. KANU, NAC Kenya, Muungano Party, Maendeleo Chap Chap, Democratic Action Party, Devolution Empowerment Party, UPIA, UDM. Just continue shouting UDM. I mean, no. UPA, PA, KUP, UDP, MDG, MDG, KRP, Chama cha Uzalendo, Party for Peace and Democracy, National Liberal Party, People's Trust Party, Ubuntu People's Forum, PNU, Labour Party of Kenya, Party for Growth and Prosperity. Those are 26 political parties that had signed a coalition agreement under the umbrella of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party on the 21st April 2022. Of course, it goes on to list those parties under the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, which I want to read. Okay, I can read, yeah. UDA, ANC, Ford Kenya, CCK, Communist, Service Party, Tujibebe, Farmers Party, Devolution Party, EFP, Umoja, Maendeleo, that had signed an agreement with Kenya Kwanza on 3rd June 2022. There are other parties listed here. Listen carefully, members. As having signed a coalition agreement under Kenya Kwanza post-election. That is on the 5th of September, 2022. These are DP, National Agenda Party, Grand Dream Development Party, Chama cha Mashinani. Then it goes on. This is important. To say that further, the following political party is not a member of any coalition. That is NOPEU. But it has since gotten into some arrangement with the Azimio, yeah. Then you may wish to note, finally, that the following political parties have filed constitutional petitions and or have filed objections with regard to their membership in Azimio. That is Maendeleo Chap, UDM, and MDG. But let me say this now. Let me say this. As I say so, allow me to table this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
members, we shall hear the Honorable Wandai in silence.
Mr. Speaker, this is a matter, and I want to go to Standing Order 19. Standing Order 19. Sorry. I need an assistant at this rate. No. United States, a member of this House, can't be my assistant. Standing Order number 19A, Part 8. Okay? First and foremost, let me go to Standing Order 19A, Part 3. Part 3 says that the majority party whip shall communicate the name of the members elected, of course, as leaders of the coalition, under paragraph 1 to the Speaker in writing on behalf of the majority party. I wanted to say this because there was an argument that Honorable Jeanette didn't attach minutes of the meeting, of the PG meeting.
No requirement.
There is no requirement under Understanding Order 19A, Part 3 for that. The only time you need the minutes of a PG meeting is when you are changing the leadership of majority or minority. That is at Standing Order 19A, Part 7. The Speaker, Part 8, 19A, Part 8 says, upon receipt of the notification and the documents under paragraph 7, and confirmation that the threshold for removal, well, that is for removal. Okay. At 19A, Part 4, the Speaker shall, as soon as practicable, following receipt of the names under paragraph 3, convey the information to the assembled House if the House is sitting, or notify members if the House is not sitting, as he earlier on alluded. So therefore, what am I saying? That upon the convening of the 13th Parliament, and upon the determination by the clerk of the National Assembly of the status of the various coalitions from the Registrar of Political Parties, pursuant to Standing Order 2B, and upon the confirmation by the Registrar of Political Parties to the clerk, the Speaker is simply expected, indeed required, under Standing Order 19A, Part 4, to simply convey the same to the House. That is what the law and the standing orders dictate. Any other thing is mere hot air. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, let me take you back to the provisions of the Political Parties Act. Because an argument, indeed, very lame argument, has been advanced before that Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party is not a coalition. Let me educate you, honorable members. If you go to the Political Parties Act, and this is an act of parliament, you all know, members, that was passed in this House and subsequently amended, including the latest one of this year. If you go to interpretation, in this act, unless the context otherwise requires, political party means an association of citizens with an identifiable ideology or program that is constituted for the purpose of influencing public policy, of nominating candidates to contest elections. And Part B, a political party includes a coalition political party. A political party includes what? A coalition political party. And it goes on to define what a coalition political party means. And says a coalition political party is a coalition that is registered by the registrar as a political party. So in short, therefore, Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party is both a political party and a coalition under the Political Parties Act. This is the law. Nobody has challenged it, and no court of law has declared it unconstitutional. As you all know, the power or the mandate to determine constitutionality of any law is vested in the High Court under Article 165 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the High Court, in Petition 043 of 2022, affirmed this position, affirmed the position that Azimio is both a party and a coalition. And let me read excerpt of that ruling, of that court ruling. There was no difference between a coalition party under the old law and a coalition political party. It stated, as for coalitions, the same have always existed in the law as they are provided for in Section 10 of the Political Parties Act. For all practical purposes, we have had coalition political parties in Kenya. One example is the Jubilee Political Party, which comprised parties like TNA, URP, among others. The only difference is that at that time, the constituent parties would be dissolved. But in the new definition of the constituent parties under the Act, parties will retain their individual identities. Therefore, all that the amendment has done is to formalize these practices through legislation. That is the court speaking, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the High Court is speaking. The High Court of the Republic of Kenya is speaking. And again, to educate my colleague, Honorable Didmas, a court judgment is law. It's what we call case law. And until I've quoted the court. Mr. Speaker, the author of the letter that I've just quoted from, that is the registrar of political parties, is the official custodian of all coalition agreements. There is actually no need for us to table any agreement, because the author of that letter is the custodian of all these agreements. If you want to confirm with her, you simply take a walk to her office and confirm the same. We don't act in vain. Okay? Let me conclude. Let me conclude. Mr. Speaker, this is a matter that, as I had said earlier on, does not really need to exercise your mind. It's a matter that you can dispense with very easily by simply going back to the Standing Order 2B. And let me say this. Eskin May, who is one of the authorities that is acclaimed the world over, has determined previously in his writings that the matters of leadership of political coalitions or parties in the House is a question of the result of parliamentary elections. If you read the 25th edition of Eskin May, which was published, I think, in 2019, you will come to realize that these matters that we are discussing here are determined way back at the time we are doing parliamentary elections. Indeed, even in the US, the matters of majority and minority are determined in the House of Representatives at the time you are carrying out parliamentary elections. No amount of gerrymandering can change the situation.
Order on the Wandai, there's a point of order.
Honorable Speaker, as much as I don't like to interrupt my good friend and colleague, but Honorable Speaker, when you allude to court cases that are before the courts, Honorable Speaker, I think it bears, the burden is on the Honorable Pio Wandai to make statements of fact. And Honorable Speaker, the case that the Honorable Pio Wandai alludes to is the same case I was alluding to, and the Honorable Pio Wandai knows that the court indeed did determine, as he says, that a coalition political party is a political party and therefore can field candidates, and the constituent political parties can also field candidates. And that is the reason why Opio Wandai is here as Member of Parliament under ODM. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, that cannot be used to vitiate the fact that Azimio One Kenya coalition does not exist as a coalition of political parties. And the Honorable Opio Wandai did indicate in his submission that Azimio One Kenya, therefore, from that court ruling, can be interpreted to mean that Azimio One Kenya coalition party is a coalition of political parties. The question before the court was on a party and a coalition political parties, not a coalition of parties.
Let me end by
yes, you have
just 1 minute.
10 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, let me end by saying this, that in the present circumstances, may you be guided by the famous, may you be guided, Mr. Speaker, by the famous doctrine in law of torts, res ipsa loquitur. Yes, Mr. Speaker, with those very many words,
It's called
thank you.
res ipsa loquitur.
Yes.
I will now give the whip of Kenya Kwanza. If you want to speak later, I can give other members. I had
No, Honorable
committed to
Speaker,
give to the whips.
No, I'm very ready, Honorable Speaker.
After you, Junet, then I'll give members to speak.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
You have 10 minutes.
Okay, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, also being the inaugural address in this 13th Parliament, I also wish to take this opportunity to thank the great people of South Mogrango for having faith in me again for the second time, and also wish to congratulate you for being elected as our Speaker for this session. Honorable Speaker, having said that, allow me, Honorable Speaker, to table the letters from the Kenya Kwanza Coalition appointing the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, the Kikuyu Member of Parliament, as the majority leader of the Kenya Kwanza Coalition, Honorable Owen Baya as the Deputy Majority Leader, and Honorable Naomi Wako as the Deputy Chief Whip of this coalition. Honorable Speaker, those letters are accompanied by the resolution. Junet, you need to cool down. No, I have tabled the letters appointing the majority leader and the deputy majority leader, Honorable Speaker, and those letters are accompanied by the...
Yes, Junet. What's your point of order?
Of course, they behave like somebody who has been here before. Mr. Speaker, I didn't want to interrupt him. I wanted to bring to your attention that when a member is tabling a document, Mr. Speaker, he does it himself. It's procedural. He can't give it to someone, go and table for me. So on the records, it will be tabled by the other member and not him. So, I know he has been busy in the campaign.
No. Honorable Speaker, I stand guided, but I think I appointed somebody, of course, to become my huntsman for just this particular session, but they are adequately tabled as guided. But if you so wish, of course, I can have them back and then table it myself.
Go on.
Exactly. But they are well tabled, Honorable Junet. Honorable Speaker, the tabled documents or the tabled letters annexed with are with the resolutions and the minutes from the Kenya Kwanza Coalition. What you will note in those resolutions, and even the attendees of that list, as indicated in the entire list, is that in the minutes, people who attended the meeting that appointed Honorable Ishungu as the majority leader, the members that attended are about 179, drawn from different parties. And if you'll allow me, Honorable Speaker, in the attendance, UDA had 145, UDM had 8, PA had 3, MCCP had 2 in that meeting, MDG had 1, ANC 8, Ford Kenya 6, TSP 2, DP 1, CCM 1, NAP Kenya 1, and GDDP 1. In total, Honorable Speaker, those are 179 members. Honorable Speaker, in the past 1 week, I've been very busy also receiving several members of this House, requesting me to place them in committees, some of which are independent members of Parliament. In total, possibly there could be 10. So today, we are talking about 189 members associating themselves with the Kenya Kwanza Coalition and, of course, clearly describing our majority in terms of numbers. Honorable Speaker, if this was a marriage that you are called to be a vicar, then clearly the consummation of marriage happened in Naivasha. A child was born, and actually not 1, not 2, but 4, Honorable Speaker. And now you are being invited today to make a determination on which particular spouse a certain spouse wants. A marriage is claimed to have taken place about 2 months ago or thereabout, and there is a spouse who feels, I don't belong here, and is decided to go this other direction. And that spouse is equipped with the Constitution of Kenya, Article 38, Article 36, on the rights of association. Honorable Speaker, even a first-year student knows that a contractual agreement entered under coercion and threats is a nullity, and you cannot validate it, Honorable Speaker, even from your seat. Any agreement that is entered at night, entered through blackmail and coercion, is a nullity. Today, I challenge the Honorable Junet, who, of course, is salivating for my majority whip seat, to table before you a resolution by the Azimio Coalition Party today with a list of members who have appended their signatures in attendance of that particular meeting, a resolution and minutes of that particular meeting, are not mere statements that we are the numbers, we are the majority. At some point, of course, we were together, and now, of course, you need to, we had a coalition agreement. Honorable Speaker, you and I know, as legal practitioners, that any law, any legislation, or any agreement that contravenes the supreme law of the land, and that is the Constitution, is null and void. Our Constitution, Honorable Speaker, is supreme. Article 36 provides for rights of association. You cannot force MDG to go in bed with you. They do not want. And they are protected by Article 36. You can't force them. You cannot force independence. You cannot force Maendeleo Chap to go in bed with you. You cannot use a mere paper that you coerced members to sign, that you've got to be with us. You signed this paper. Those people are protected. Those members are protected under Article 36 and Article 38. Honorable Speaker, the invitation you are being called upon to determine on a mere paper, on a mere agreement, that even the contents to which were not shared to those people who signed is wrong. Please decline that invitation. The majority coalition is Kenya Kwanza. And the right of association cannot be downplayed by a mere agreement. Honorable Speaker, the third point that, as you retire to make your determination, that you need to relook at, is the provision of Article 108 on the definition of what a political party is. Honorable Speaker, by all standards, from whichever angle you look at, you choose to look at this whole thing, the definition of Azimio as it stands now is simply Azimio Coalition Party. It stands with the same level. It positions itself with the same level as ODM, as UDA, as Maendeleo Chap, and all these other parties. And today, Honorable Speaker, if you call for account the members of Azimio Coalition Party here in this House, you'll get none. There is only one member of Azimio Coalition Party, as provided, if you go by the definition of Article 108(2), and that is the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. All the rest are members of parties, including myself. I'm a member of UDA. The Honorable Junet is a member of ODM, who enjoy a sizable number of these in this House. They are only 88. And I also want to echo the sentiments of my colleague, Honorable Ishungwa, when he says that they've also been very fair to award or to give, to share their very small, meager cake to their short brothers, to their brothers who don't deserve, the Wiper and the other parties. Honorable Speaker, we challenge them today.
Yes, the Honorable, yes, Honorable Mbui.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to stand to interrupt his debate, but Mr. Speaker, honestly, is it parliamentary for us, for the member of parliament, to belittle political parties that are actually parliamentary parties because they already have hit the 5% threshold that the standing orders define? So, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask that the member respect this party and withdraw those statements.
Honorable Speaker,
yes.
For clarity purposes, what I meant is Wiper is short in number. They're actually very short in this House. That was my description. So, as I wind up, Honorable Speaker.
Your time is up.
That is all, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Okay. The Honorable Junet, 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to say that I want to congratulate you first for being elected as a Speaker, but secondly, Mr. Speaker, we are a country that is governed by the Constitution and the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, you know, and members know very well, that we have, as a country, decided to govern our... Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, as a country, we have decided to manage our politics in a certain way, legally, Mr. Speaker. And I know, Mr. Speaker, that we did an amendment to the Political Parties Act here. And as alluded to by Honorable Ishungwa, it may have been as acrimonious as possible. But Mr. Speaker, the law was passed. The law was assented to. And some of their architects might be even in this house with us. But anyway, that's a story for another day, Mr. Speaker. The law was assented to, Mr. Speaker, and the law was passed. And the law was taken to the Constitutional Court by a private citizen. And the court affirmed that the law was enacted constitutionally, Mr. Speaker. Having said, Mr. Speaker, that, and numbers were raised here, and voting was done, and everything was done. But, Mr. Speaker, the issue I want to raise here is that in governing our politics, we decided to have pre-election coalitions and post-election coalitions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what we are discussing here are members of parties that made a pre-election coalition agreement, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, that agreement was registered with the political parties registrar. And, Mr. Speaker, when I finish my presentation, I want to table that coalition agreement, Mr. Speaker. It is with me here. And all those parties have signed, Mr. Speaker, through their signatures, Mr. Speaker, in a broad daylight, in a ceremony that was held at KICC, Mr. Speaker. Those who are saying it was at night, maybe that time they were campaigning somewhere. But the ceremony, Mr. Speaker, started at 9 a.m. in the morning and ended at 3 a.m. And we went to a rally in Jacaranda after that until 6 p.m., Mr. Speaker, 3 p.m. And all these parties, WIPA, Kenya African Union, KANU, National Rainbow Coalition, National NARC Kenya, Muungano Party, this is Maendeleo Chap-Chap, Mr. Speaker. They have signed here with their secretary, Mr. Wilfred Sijui Nyamu, Mr. Speaker, Democratic Action Party, Devolution, all of them signed here, Mr. Speaker. And I want to table this agreement, Mr. Speaker. And Ochieng Party, Mr. Speaker, MDG, signed here. And I know why he signed, Mr. Speaker, but that's a story for another day. Mr. Speaker, we must respect our laws, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you yourself, you are a party leader, Mr. Speaker, before the election. And you decided on your own volition, your party wants to have a pre-election coalition agreement with another coalition, Mr. Speaker. And those parties should have followed you suit, Mr. Speaker. You cannot, Mr. Speaker, break a marriage, just to pick from where Honorable Osoro left. You cannot engage in another marriage, Mr. Speaker, and marry another person before you divorce the first one, Mr. Speaker. And when you want to divorce, there is a divorce procedure to follow, Mr. Speaker. You must divorce procedurally, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what I want to say is that, Mr. Speaker, this pre-election coalition agreement is in force, Mr. Speaker. It is registered. This country has left the era when coalition agreements used to be rubbish the way they want, Mr. Speaker. That is what made the Political Parties Act to bring provisions that make sure that coalition agreements are held against the people who signed for it, Mr. Speaker. You remember the MOUs that were signed in 2002, the MOUs that were signed. When the new constitution came, this parliament, in its own wisdom, passed the Political Parties Act and said that you have to deposit the agreement with the registrar of political parties. If you want to exit this coalition agreement, there are exit clauses you have to follow. There are clauses that allow you to exit, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, more importantly, the parties that claim to have left this coalition, Mr. Speaker, have written to me as the Secretary General of Azimio. They have petitions. They are saying after that they are going to the Constitutional Court to get an order to get out of the coalition, that is the right route. If they knew they can walk in and walk out as they wish, why are they deciding to go to court? They should have just walked away like somebody who is in a supermarket, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is either, when we came here, Mr. Speaker, we swore to uphold and defend the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. That is the oath of office we took. And the Constitution demands us to respect instruments of legal nature like this that you have committed to yourself to, Mr. Speaker. If you want to walk out of it the way you want, that's your choice. But the fact of the matter is, this country will be governed by the rule of law. This country will be governed by the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, how do we have a mature democracy? Mr. Speaker, this presidential system that we are using to govern our country, we borrowed from the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, there are times when the president of the Republic of Kenya does not have the numbers in the Congress. But he does not cease being the president of that republic. They have midterm elections where the president loses the Congress. Obama lost it in 2015, I think. But he did not cease being the president of the Republic of the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't mean that for you to become president, you must have the numbers in parliament. No. Parliament is a separate arm of government. Mr. Speaker, you can still remain the president and you still don't have numbers in the National Assembly. Maybe you have the numbers in the Senate. That is how mature democracies operate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you can get numbers in parliament through election. You cannot get members of parliament through poaching, Mr. Speaker. That's a fact of the matter, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we want to categorically say on the floor of this House, the precedents we are going to set this parliament, this time, is going to be for posterity because we are going to have elections in 2027. A president might be elected who is going to have less numbers in the National Assembly. Then he wants to force people to accept that he's the majority party in parliament because he's the president. No, the presidential election is separate from the parliamentary election, Mr. Speaker. People can be elected in one party, in one coalition, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, let us not mutilate democracy on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker. We must accept that the will of the people of Kenya, who elected the president as the president, must be respected as the will of the people who gave certain coalition and certain party the majority in this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am being told that Azimio la Umoja, one party, has no leadership in this House. Their presidential candidate is in this House. The leader of the Kenya Kwanza is not in this House, Mr. Speaker. He is sitting in State House. He's the president, he is in State House. He's not in this House with us. So there is no requirement the leader of a coalition must be in this House, Mr. Speaker. The leader of the coalition can sit anywhere in town so long as his troops and his members of parliament are in this House, Mr. Speaker. You cannot, then let us have the president here sitting with us, Mr. Speaker, as the leader of the Kenya Kwanza coalition, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we don't want even ourselves as the Azimio la Umoja to be given a due advantage, Mr. Speaker. If we had less numbers, Mr. Speaker, the will of the people, these parties that joined Azimio la Umoja One Kenya, Mr. Speaker, came knowing very well that they are in this coalition in their rightful state of mind, Mr. Speaker, and the people who elected them to this House knew very well that they are in that coalition, Mr. Speaker. It will be betrayal of the people who elected those people in the name of Azimio, Mr. Speaker, for them to come to Nairobi, for them to come to the parliament and change course, Mr. Speaker. That is not the democracy we want to advance in this country, Mr. Speaker. Let us have let us have politics that follows the law, Mr. Speaker. Let us have politics that respects institutions, Mr. Speaker. For example, just wait, Pokose. Mr. Speaker, the registrar of political society, or political party, Mr. Speaker, has this document.
Point of order, Honorable Jeanette.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to know, Mr. Speaker, is it in order, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, standing order number 1, Mr. Speaker, which state claims, Mr. Speaker, that Honorable Junaid Mohammed, Mr. Speaker, correct, Mr. Speaker, should Junaid Mohammed, Mr. Speaker, lie to the House that he is the director of elections in ODM and again a Secretary General of Azimio la Umoja Party, Mr. Speaker? One must pay allegiance to one political party. Can you tell us, Mr. Speaker, which position he holds in both Azimio and ODM? And a promoter of BBI, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I know.
Honorable Jeanette, your time is up. I give you 30 seconds to...
Mr. Speaker, to conclude my submission, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this parliament has a date with destiny, Mr. Speaker. Yeah. The way we rule on this matter, Mr. Speaker, will determine the way our politics will be conducted going forward. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge you, with humility, have fidelity to the Constitution and the law. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Duale.
Mr. Speaker, today is a day that I will remember. Early this year, we had the Political Parties Amendment Bill, very chaotic, and Mr. Speaker, the CS until I am approved by this August House. Mr. Speaker, I remember, and the answer will prove me right. I told my colleagues then that don't make laws that will haunt you. And there are people who are running away from that chaos. As they say, Murive, don't run. Murive, don't run. Junet and his colleagues, don't run. This matter must be decided this afternoon. And Mr. Speaker, your predecessors have decided more complex issues. I was with you in the 10th Parliament, during the Grand Coalition government, where the leader of government business used to be the chair of the House Business Committee. And when the Vice President, then Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga argued who will chair, Speaker Marende took over. So, Mr. Speaker, in the legislature, you are the arbiter. You should not be referred to anything. Listen to us, and based on law and facts and evidence. Mr. Speaker, what my colleagues, our opponents, are going through is what the medical doctors call placebo. Placebo is something, a lie, a healing. You claim that you have healed psychologically, but you have not healed. So in in March of this year, early this year, the Speaker, you know we are not in Isli, where me and him talk to each other like that. We are in the guest house. The Speaker, yeah. When we are in Isli, we can talk to Jure the way we want. Yeah, this is the guest house. Yes. Mr. Speaker, so Mr. Speaker, they thought this was the healing. The healing time is over. But Mr. Speaker, I want you to rule on 6 things I want to tell you. I'm the Speaker, and I want to start with Article 2 of the Constitution, sub-Article 4 says, any law, including customary law, that is inconsistent with this Constitution is void to the extent of the inconsistency, and any act or commission in contravention of this Constitution is invalid. Even an act of Parliament passed by this House, if it is not consistent with this Constitution, it is null and void. Mr. Speaker, Article 36 of the Constitution, and Article 36 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, is on the Bill of Rights. It's about human rights. It says the freedom of association. Speaker, you have to give me my time then, you know, when I'm disrupted.
Give him the mic.
He must say what's out of order.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Watch.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Is it in order that the former majority leader misleads this House by giving the impression that the question of constitutionality or nullity is a question that can be determined otherwise than by a court of law? We can have our own interpretations, we can have our own thinking of what is constitutional or not, but this is a question that can only be determined by a court of law. Is it in order?
Mr. Speaker, in this August House, you are the arbiter. You are the ones who decide. Those who go to the judicial system, to the courts, you can go, as Honorable Wandai said. So, Mr. Speaker, Article 36 is in the Bill of Rights. For even to amend it, you must go to a referendum. It's about freedom of association. And it says that you can join, you can participate in any activity of any association of your kind. 36(2) says that nobody can compel you to join. Mr. Speaker, PA, MDG, and I want to thank the leader of MDG, is in this House. He is a leader to be watched in Luo Nyanza. He's a serious guy. He came to this House with a small party in Siaya, from Siaya County. He must enjoy his rights, Mr. Speaker. The framers of the Constitution protected MDG. The framers of the Constitution, both in letter and spirit, protected PA as a party and its membership, rank and file. Article 38, Mr. Speaker, and you must rule on it. Again, in the Bill of Rights, it's about human rights. It says on political rights that provides political rights of every person, including members of PA, members of MDG, members of small parties. Mandela Chap, they have got political rights, and the Constitution under Article 38 defense. Mr. Speaker, a legal document signed, and I'm sure when you talk to the Speaker of the Senate, your colleague, you talk to the Foreign Secretary nominee, they will tell you they signed the last page under coercion, under intimidation. Mr. Speaker, do you follow that document? Mr. Speaker, let me finish. Let me finish here this time. Mr. Speaker, let me finish. And you have to give me time.
Yes, the Honorable Chege.
I'll prove. I'll bring Kinot here. Kinot is still high.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, I respect Honorable Duale as a ranking member. And any evidence that he gives to this House must be factual. So for him to come and lie to this House that people signed under coercion, it is really very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker. And I would like, Mr. Speaker, that we strict ourselves to the facts. We have people who are here, Mr. Speaker.
They will speak.
Who signed, they can speak on their behalf and on themselves. And so I would really urge Honorable Member, Honorable Duale, to just speak the facts.
Mr. Speaker, you need to add me time. Mr. Speaker, in this House, Mr. Speaker, my good sister, Sabina Chege, at that time was the custodian of the instrument. Honorable Ochieng will speak. Honorable Kamket will speak. Yes. Members of PA will speak. Yes. Members of Mandela Chapchap will speak. And they will say under what condition, under what environment they signed. And the people of Kenya must hear to David Ochieng. Yes. And Mr. Speaker, because a commission of inquiry into certain things might be formed. So relax. Mr. Speaker, listen to us under Article 36, Sub-Article 1, Article 36, Sub-Article 2, Sub-Article 38 on political rights. Mr. Speaker, the other thing you need to, I'm inviting you to is whether Azimio coalition is a political party or a coalition party. And Mr. Speaker, I want to give as a ranking member. These are members who will approve me. And please, now I'm the member for township. In fact, the serious issue Azimio should think about is that they will not access the political party's fund. And I'll tell you why. The 6.9 million votes, Honorable Raila Odinga, a man who inducted me into politics, got it. He was the only candidate of that party in the general election. There was no MCS in Azimio. There were no MPs. There were no governors. Read the Political Parties Act. It says, Mr. Speaker, defend me from
pursuing an argument.
No, I'm pursuing an argument. You will have your time. No, Mr. Speaker, you can't shout. You can't shout when I'm on my feet. No.
Honorable Chonga.
Mr. Speaker, he has
Honorable Duale. Honorable Chonga, I believe you're a first termer. Second term. Okay. Then you should know even better that the Honorable Chonga.
Speaker is talking.
Honorable Chonga, there are your colleagues here who are here for the first time, and they are looking to you to learn on how to conduct yourself. It's out of order to stand up and shout at your colleague across the aisle. You seek the Speaker's permission, then you pursue a counter argument. But you do not stand up and behave in a rally situation, which I said we shouldn't have.
Mr. Speaker, because I have been very much interrupted, we'll give you about 3 more minutes. Mr. Speaker, I want you to also, I invite you to
I give you 2 minutes because of the...
I want to invite you to whether the exit clause in the post-election agreement has any basis. Mr. Speaker, I looked at the Political Parties Act 2011. There is nowhere that will stop PAR and these other parties from exiting. Let my colleagues tell me which section. Mr. Speaker, you need to look at whether... Speaker, some are telling you that the matter is sub judice. I agree. But Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 89.5 allows you as a Speaker to allow this House to discuss a matter that is in court. So, Mr. Speaker, we are within the parameters of law. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the Speaker used the Constitution. Use Article 108. This matter is very serious. Forget about coalitions, Mr. Speaker. Deal with the political parties. If you have got 84 members, that is your share as ODM. If you have 145 members, that is a share given to you by the people of Kenya UDA. If you have got 5 or 10, like Kanu, Kamket has left, now you are less shares. If you are PAR, there are 3. They want to enjoy their freedom. Mr. Speaker, during your predecessor, he made a ruling on a matter concerning Honorable David Ochieng. When David Ochieng was elected in a small party and coming from ODM stronghold, they refused to give him. That time they were called NASA. You know, they mutate. I'm in this House. From CORD to NASA to Azimio, the mutation and the turnover is so high. You know, it's so high, Mr. Speaker. I don't know what they will be, but Mr. Speaker, the Speaker ruled that Ochieng must be given a committee. Mr. Speaker, defend PAR members. They have the rights under Article 38. Mr. Speaker, do not look at agreements signed by you. You are at one time, Mr. Speaker, on a lighter note, you were even at one time about to join Azimio. But God forbid you are a good Christian. You didn't join. Mr. Speaker.
Order, Honorable Duale, no member shall use Mr. Speaker to advance an argument. The Honorable John Badi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me first start by saying that I think we have started in the right direction. Why do I say so? Mr. Speaker, by allowing members to ventilate on this matter, to me comes out very clearly that Mr. Speaker wants to benefit from opinions or contributions by members from across the political divide. Mr. Speaker, there are certain things that are not in contention. What is not in contention is, one, that both Kenya Kwanza Coalition and the Azimio One Kenya Alliance Coalition are not in dispute on who should lead the two coalitions. That there is just one letter coming from Kenya Kwanza nominating Kimani Chungwa as the leader, Owen Baya as the deputy, Honorable Soro as the whip, and of course my great sister as the deputy whip. Again, from the Azimio side, there is no dispute. The leader is Opiyo Wandayi, James Opiyo Wandayi, deputized by Mbui. The whip is Junet Mohammed, to be deputized by Sabina Chege. So that matter is settled. Both sides are clear on who should lead them. So the issue of minutes appended, attached, copies to be provided or submitted to the House rests there. Because unless there was contention as to who has been nominated by either side, then we would be discussing whether there are minutes, there are addendum or whatever it is. So having settled that, Mr. Speaker, what therefore is in contention in this House is which side is the majority. That is where we see the argument from Kimani Chungwa and his team and Opiyo Wandayi and his team arguing. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is not ambiguous. Article 108 talks about the leader of majority being the leader of the party or coalition of parties which has the majority membership in this House. Since it is clear, then what is not clear? What is being disputed here is these two coalitions, which has the majority membership. Now, I have heard the argument that we passed a law in this House that has created chaos or caused chaos. Nothing could be further from the truth, Mr. Speaker. Let us accept the legal framework that we have. We might have been used to the old framework, but what we created at the House was where we can have a political party with corporate membership, and therefore, basically, is a coalition political party and coalition of parties. Mr. Speaker, if you want to argue that Azimio la Umoja One Kenya is a political party and not a coalition of political parties, the question you will want to ask or address yourself to is, what are the legal provisions for registering a political party? The legal provisions are clear. You must have 24,000 members, at least 1,000 from majority of our counties, which are 24. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance was exempted from that. Why? Because it is a corporate political party. Mr. Speaker, when you say that this is not a coalition, the next question you will ask, where in this country, of the 47 counties, does Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance has a registered party office? None. Yet that is a requirement in law to register a political party. The reason why Azimio was accepted to be registered is because it is a corporate political party. So the moment ODM, Wiper, Jubilee, KANU, etc. have registered offices, then Azimio la Umoja, in effect, has registered offices. Mr. Speaker, it is in that same reasoning why Raila Amolo Odinga, when he was presenting his papers to IEBC, was cleared, because there was a requirement that he should present signatures of proposers and supporters. And those signatures must be from members of your political party. Azimio la Umoja does not have even a single direct membership. And therefore, Raila was cleared, having been supported by members of KANU, members of Wiper, members of ODM, members of Jubilee. Therefore, those members of KANU, members of ODM, members of Jubilee are all members of Azimio la Umoja as a corporate entity. The moment you are a member of ODM, by extension, you are also a member of Azimio la Umoja political party. Therefore, this reasoning that there is no member in this House who is a member of Azimio is faulty. You cannot. There is a gentleman in this House. His name is Junet Sheikh Nur Mohammed. This gentleman is the Secretary General of Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya Coalition. And he's representing the people of Suna East. And then you come here and argue, and he's registered with the register of political parties as the Secretary General. Then you come here and you want to say that Azimio la Umoja does not even have a single member of parliament. That completely is misrepresentation of facts. Mr. Speaker, Azimio la Umoja was exempted from provisions of Section 5 and Section 6 of the Political Parties Act. Why? Because this is a corporate political entity, political party, which has corporate membership. And that is why we were amending the law here, so that you could provide a situation where a political party is both a political party where you can be a member directly, and at the same time, political parties can be members of that political party. And that is the situation as it obtains today. You can take advantage of it and dissolve all, and make sure that all your political parties are also collapsed into a mega or a bigger political outfit called Kenya Kwanza, without having to just have it as coalition of political parties. Mr. Speaker, you know, Azimio la Umoja is based on coalition agreement, just like any other coalition, like Kenya Kwanza. It is based on coalition agreement. And Mr. Speaker, I listened very carefully, and I was trying to avoid usage of these words, but I'll use it. I'll use them, because Honorable Soro did use them. Honorable Soro was saying that you cannot stop a political party from going to bed with another one. That if someone has married another person, you cannot stop that person from going to bed. Yes, you can't stop anybody from going to bed with another, but you can stop another marriage before the earlier marriage is dissolved. So someone can go to bed as they so wish,
yes,
but marriage only subsists.
Sorry, Honorable Mbadi, there's a point of order. Give him the mic. There it is.
Oh, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Mbadi is my mentor. I did not really want to interrupt him. But I now see that this may progress and progress and progress. We have parliamentary language. And that language is using that marriage going into bed, though earlier used by Osoro, is unparliamentary. So please, we could restrain ourselves from that. I'm very sorry, Honorable Mbadi, but you are a seasoned member. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I think Honorable Mboko is uncomfortable with the language, but the language is not unparliamentary. Going to bed is just going to bed. And marriage is marriage. But what I'm saying is you cannot start another marriage until you wind up the previous marriage. So, Honorable Soro, you should advise your new, what do you call them, the new whatever, to make sure that the other marriage is concluded first. But, Mr. Speaker, there was an argument here by Honorable Duale, which if you allow me to challenge, that there is something unconstitutional about what we have done in terms of making agreements. There is nothing unconstitutional. Article 92 of the Constitution allows Parliament to enact legislation to provide for the regulation of political parties. And in doing that, we created Political Parties Act, which gave rise within the Act to the agreements. Finally, Mr. Speaker, allow me to say this. As you protect the rights of those members of PAR, MDG, and others who want to leave Azimio, remember there is also the rights of people of Ugenya who elected Uchieng, knowing very well that he was Azimio, and he has not consulted them. So whose right is superior? Is it the on to Kenya?
Your time is up for the Honorable John Mbadi. From now going forward, thank you, Honorable Mbadi. Allow me to regulate your time down to 5 minutes per member. Are we in agreement? Yes. I'll give the floor to the Honorable David Ocheng.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would request for 10 because my name has been mentioned so many times, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on this particular matter...
compress your arguments in 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, on this particular matter, I wrote to your office on the 9th of September, Mr. Speaker, about our position in Azimio, having left the coalition party and joined Kenya Kwanza, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have that letter here and I would like to table it. Mr. Speaker, the reasons for our leaving Azimio are very instructive because so much has been said about us and how the marriage was done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, after the elections, the MDG NEC sat and reviewed the campaigns and our Azimio la Umoja, Mr. Speaker. And members brought the following issues. One, that in the former Nyanza, the Azimio leadership was so hostile to the MDG members running in that party, they were called Madoadoa. They were told that Azimio ends in Awasi. That when you come from Nairobi and you get to Awasi, you now leave Azimio is dead, it's ODM stronghold, Mr. Speaker. This same thing happened in my constituency. When the Azimio party leader came to my constituency, I couldn't even attend because I was a Madoadoa. How would I be a Madoadoa and still belong to the party that calls me Madoadoa, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I would also like to table a letter from the register of political parties. We've written to the register severally, asking for a copy of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Up to date, we've not been given to it. Mr. Speaker, I'm tabling a letter here again today. The register telling us that they cannot give it to us, go to Azimio la Umoja. Mr. Speaker, I must say that what the Honorable Junet has tabled today, no one can verify its authenticity. No one knows whether what is tabled is the document that we signed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the letter that I have here, if you allow me to read it, this letter I'm holding is from the register of political parties to our party, saying they cannot give us the agreement, we go to the Azimio la Umoja headquarters, Mr. Speaker. You go there, you're told, come back tomorrow. Come back next week, Mr. Speaker. Up to now, our party has never received a copy of this agreement. I've perused what United has given to us, Mr. Speaker, and I dare say that the content of that agreement are not the ones that we negotiated, Mr. Speaker. So I cannot verify, I cannot truthfully say that what United has tabled here today is what we negotiated, what we signed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, number 3, our party says that Azimio la Umoja had 3 organs: the council, the NEC, and the secretariat, Mr. Speaker. In all those organs, the council, the NEC, the secretariat, MDG has no body representing them there, not one. So how do we belong to a coalition that doesn't recognize that we exist, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, on the 29th of August this year, we wrote to the registrar withdrawing a membership of Azimio. I also wish to about that letter, Mr. Speaker, and the minutes of our NEC withdrawing membership from Azimio la Umoja, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, very important, Mr. Speaker, is the argument of the nature of the Azimio political party, Mr. Speaker. What has been tabled today by Mr. Junet, Mr. Speaker, is the instrument for registering Azimio coalition party. Mr. Speaker, there is nowhere, you won't find the other political parties, there's nowhere where the parties forming Azimio registered a coalition. Because you must distinguish the two. There's a coalition party and the Azimio is a coalition of parties.
Yes,
Mr. Speaker, it's not my intention to interrupt the Honourable Member, but Mr. Speaker, I urge him first to go through the document, Mr. Speaker. It is well written inside there, the formation of the Azimio coalition. Mr. Speaker, misrepresentation of facts, Mr. Speaker, will not be, this is a house of records. So we don't want it to go on record when the document is very clear on the formation of the Azimio coalition. It's well stipulated in the document.
Mr. Speaker, the document holding, which was tabled by Junet, says a deal of agreement in respect of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya being a coalition political party. My argument is this, Mr. Speaker, that for the argument that Azimio is a coalition within the frame of 108 and 19 of our standing orders, 2 things must have been done. 1, register Azimio as a coalition party, which is done. But where is the Azimio coalition of parties agreement to enable them claim that they are a coalition at the same time? That's the argument that I'm trying to make, Mr. Speaker. That there's a distinction between a coalition party on the one hand, which there is and exists, and a coalition of parties. Azimio is saying they have 2 legs. The only one you are being given today is 1 leg. Where's the other leg, Mr. Speaker?
Your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, allow me. I just have maybe 2 more minutes, Mr. Speaker.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker.
30 give him 30 seconds. I've given him 30 seconds.
Thank you.
You have a mic next to you. 30
this is
seconds.
too short. The same law we passed, Mr. Speaker, the same law we passed here in May allows a member of a party to be deemed to have resigned from the party if that member forms another party, joins another party, or talks about forming another party, Mr. Speaker. If the MDG party has clearly, openly, publicly said they are part of Kenya Kwanza coalition. Mr. Speaker, we request that you deem MDG under that law to have moved away from the Azimio political party to Kenya Kwanza coalition, Mr. Speaker. So submitted. Thank you.
The Honorable Naisula Lesuda. She's left. I'll give to the Honorable Kamket.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, this is my first time to speak in the 13th Parliament, and I want to thank the people of Tiaty for bringing me back to this Parliament and congratulate you also and your deputy for your election as Speaker and Deputy. Mr. Speaker, as you make your determination on this matter, I would like you to have me in mind as a member for Parliament for Tiaty constituency. Mr. Speaker, as you have me in mind, kindly refer to Article 36 of the Constitution in its entirety. And I ask you, Mr. Speaker, to protect me from being forced to stay in an abusive marriage. I plead with you, Mr. Speaker, to protect me from being forced in a very bad marriage. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I have just seen the Honorable Junet table a document which was not disclosed to us throughout. The document he has tabled is not known to me as a member of KANU. It was never disclosed to us. We kept asking for it. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I cannot be party to an agreement that was signed without my knowledge of the material facts in it. And Mr. Speaker, as a pastoralist, Mr. Speaker, and a very serious nomadic pastoralist, Mr. Speaker, I cannot be put in a cage. I cannot be tied to a tree. If my cow cannot be tethered to a tree, how can a whole me, the member of Parliament for Tiaty constituency, be tied to a tree? Mr. Speaker, the question as you determine this matter, you need to ask yourself is this. Which agreement supersedes the other? Is it the pre-election agreement or post-election agreement? Because, Mr. Speaker, it depends on how the agreement was reached. If the agreement was reached through deceit and duress, Mr. Speaker, these honorable members know that I was arrested severally in the last term on trumped-up charges. Is that not one of the reasons why some of us decided to play along at that time? Yes. And now we are here as free. Freedom has come to the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable members. We shall hear the Honorable Kamket in silence.
So, Mr. Speaker, as you retire to determine this matter, it is important to take into account the present circumstances. You cannot, Mr. Speaker, deny the honorable members of this House, those who have attained that freedom, the opportunity to exercise their political and constitutional rights as provided for in Article 36 of the Constitution. Fundamentally, I mean, even in the provided in the laws of natural justice, Mr. Speaker, that when an old agreement, when a new agreement is signed, the other one just dies naturally. And when somebody makes a decision today, yesterday's decision does not matter. I am now, yes, laws of natural justice. So, Mr. Speaker, I plead with you, Mr. Speaker, to save me from that bad, abusive marriage.
Time up.
I was not the Azimio
Time
candidate.
up.
I am a member of parliament for Tiati, and my people know that I'm in Kenya.
I'll give the floor to the Honorable Didymus Baraza. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And I will just go straight to invite you to Article 36 of the Constitution. And we believe in the supremacy of the Constitution. Article 36, Honorable Speaker, it protects an individual and a political party from the freedom of association. And even as you retreat to deliver the judgment on this matter, I want you to be guided by two things. Do we believe? If we believe in the supremacy of the Constitution and the freedom of association, can this freedom, which is a fundamental right, be taken away by an agreement between two people or between one party and the other, an agreement which was signed in an opaque manner, Mr. Speaker? I don't believe so. The second thing, Mr. Speaker, that I want you to look at is that it will be indeed a very sad day for Kenya. It will be a dark day for this country if you will allow that an individual or political parties can be forced to remain or to associate with a person they have vehemently refused. All those parties that have said they don't belong to Azimio One Kenya, they have said so through a letter, enmas. They have left this abusive marriage, Honorable Speaker, and it will be wrong. Your hands are tied, Honorable Speaker. You took oath of office to protect and uphold the Constitution. And because we believe in the supremacy of the Constitution, the fundamental right of an individual to associate with a political party of his or her choice cannot be washed away by you, Honorable Speaker. Your hands are tied, and if these people have said they want to leave the Azimio One Kenya Alliance, you have no choice. The One Kenya Alliance party has to let them go, and they should leave, Honorable Speaker. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, is that I was in this House when that law was being passed. I have a lot of respect for my good friend TJ Kajwang. But TJ Kajwang is the one who misled these members of ODM. He was masquerading as the people's Chief Justice into believing that this was a good law. You planted your own mango trees, you have to eat it, you have to live by it, as me and Kenya.
Order, Honorable Didymus.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I didn't really want to interrupt my good colleague, Honorable Didymus Baraza. But, Mr. Speaker, is it in order for Honorable Didymus Baraza to impute improper motive on the membership of this House, especially from ODM, by insinuating that TJ Kajwang misled a whole lot of us, people who have gone to school and have gone to school properly? Mr. Speaker, he should withdraw that remark and apologize to us. Someone like me who has gone to school and has gone to school properly cannot be misled by TJ Kajwang.
The Honorable Mbadi, the only difficult I have is that TJ Kajwang is sitting there smiling broadly as being described. Honorable Didymus, you wind up your argument.
Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that we warned this ODM party that when you make laws for posterity. You don't make laws to support where you are standing. Now they are finding themselves on the receiving end. The Constitution must be applied rightfully. This Constitution cannot be rubbished. The rights that are in this Constitution cannot be taken away by people who signed a document, and I'm told even when they were signing those documents, they may have drunk some things which don't go to the stomach, but they go upstairs, Honorable Speaker. So the ruling for you is going to be very clear, Honorable Speaker, that the majority coalition is Kenya Kwanza.
The Honorable Robert Mbui. Nobody's on the floor, the Honorable TJ, so nothing is out of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. First, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say that this issue of who is majority and who is minority has caused a lot of confusion. In fact, the media, our voters are confused to the point where some think that the same way we voted for the Speaker here is the same way we might end up having to vote for the leader of majority. But, Mr. Speaker, this issue is not opaque. This is in black and white. Because, Mr. Speaker, I've had members here talk about some issues, and I think I would like to say that what we are facing as a problem now is a situation, and because members have talked about marriage, is a situation where your newlywed wife, after she settles in your home, notices that your neighbor has a brand new car. And then she starts now talking about an abusive marriage. But nothing has gone wrong. And Mr. Speaker, any relationship with a neighbor with a brand new car or a house on the top of the hill is actually a cohabiting relationship. It is not a properly procured marriage. So, Mr. Speaker, who has a properly procured marriage? Those of us, Mr. Speaker, that signed an agreement before the time of the election. Mr. Speaker, this Constitution Article 108 is very clear about the leader of the majority party, and it says on Part 2 that it is the leader of the largest party or coalition of parties. And Mr. Speaker, I want to point out that the size of a party is based on the number of elected members. Mr. Speaker, if you go back to the last election, there was 4 teams that were competing for elective office. Let's forget the Wajakoa and the other one. We are left with 2 teams, and that was Raila Amolo Odinga and William Samoei Ruto. Each of them had a coalition, which was known by everybody in the country, including even nursery school children. Mr. Speaker, the results of this election were announced, and it clearly showed that those that were elected under the Azimio la Umoja were more than those that were elected under the Kenya Kwanza. Mr. Speaker, it is only after the election that things started changing, and only after the announcement of Honorable William Ruto, His Excellency, as the president, that things started changing. If the results were different, I can tell you, we would not even be having this discussion. So let us be honest with ourselves and agree, Mr. Speaker, that the fact is this. You know, and I've heard that, I've heard people complain, but let me just tell you, the fact is that to determine the majority is by a letter that was read and tabled on the floor today. So what further argument do we have about deciding who is the majority? Now, in another month, Mr. Speaker, I do agree that Azimio la Umoja will not be majority. But as we speak today, Mr. Speaker, I think you have under no obligation to make that decision because the decision is already made for you. The Constitution has made that decision. The Standing Orders 2B has made that decision. So, Mr. Speaker, your work is easy for you. I've heard this issue of the Political Parties Act being lambasted by members of this House. I want to say this, Mr. Speaker. It is unfortunate that we as members of the House are the ones that passed this law, and now we are insulting it. Mr. Speaker, there is no duress because members of Parliament did take a vote, and there are those that voted for it, and there are those that voted against it. Mr. Speaker, as you sit on your chair, please note, and this is a fact, that, Mr. Speaker, members make a decision through a vote. So if the vote is taken and this becomes a law, it becomes a law for the land. And His Excellency the President Uhuru Kenyatta actually assented to it. So when we start saying it is an amorphous law, it is a bad law, it is a law that was under coercion, Mr. Speaker, I think it is unfortunate because as a House, we made a decision, we made our bed, we lie on it. But Mr. Speaker, there is nothing wrong with the Political Parties Act. It's only curing political indiscipline, where people want to belong to one party and another at the same time, where people are elected in one coalition and the next day they troop in their numbers to go and get coerced, Mr. Speaker, so that they can defect for the parties that elected them. Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament must remain true to the people that elected them into the House, and those who are elected under Azimio must stick with Azimio. Mr. Speaker, there are people from our region who are elected, and we went as Wiper to support them because they were in Azimio. Now, immediately after the election, they jump and go to Kenya Kwanza. But they have not gone to tell the people why they defected. Mr. Speaker, I think it is a simple decision. Azimio la Umoja is a majority party, and I am the deputy.
Thank you, Honorable. The Honorable, we have really many members. The Honorable Member Chepkonga.
Mr. Speaker.
Chepkonga and Chonga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My mind starts with CH and it was clear. Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is my first time to speak to this motion, and I'd like to take this opportunity first to congratulate you for your worthy election as a Speaker of this House. Two, I'd like to thank the people of Ainabkoi for electing me as their Member of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, there has been an attempt to persuade you and convince you to believe the wrong facts. In fact, Mr. Speaker, papers have been tabled in this House. You have been told about the election of the majority leader from the Azimio side. You know, Standing Order number 91 requires that you must be correct in the information you provide to this House. And you do not redact. This is not an ICC process, Mr. Speaker, where you redact certain information. The Azimio group, the Azimio coalition group, Mr. Speaker, must include the minutes. And they know this. When you are being elected as a Member of Parliament, you are just not elected by just any other person. There's a register of members in that polling station. And when you are declared as a Member of Parliament, there is a register which shows that these members of Parliament, these voters participated in the election. Mr. Speaker, you have not been shown anything. They have been trying to convince you, you're not trying to hide facts here. You know, under some cloud here, Mr. Speaker. You know, you have heard Honorable Cheng, my very good friend. What he has just told you, he participated in the PG of Kenya Kwanza. And you are being told that it's the same people who elected Opio Andai as the majority leader. Now, I don't know whether it's split into two, so that we had half of Honorable David Ochieng in Azimio, and then the other one in Kenya Kwanza, Mr. Speaker. You know, that is the reason why I'm inviting you, Mr. Speaker, to consider the document that was tabled here as I have information. It is not complete, it's not factual. They need to provide the people who participated in electing the majority leader. This was not a nomination. The standing order is very clear. The election, Mr. Speaker. And there's nothing skittering around on this matter. You must be faithful to the law. The second thing, Mr. Speaker, I have just had an opportunity to have a cursory look on the coalition agreement of Azimio. In fact, I would like to invite you to consider on page 11 that the members, it has already been tabled. I have just had an opportunity of going through, I've been given from the table office. I'll read for you, because you are the one who provided. Article 12 of the Code of Conduct, Mr. Speaker. It says members of the coalition partners shall abide by the provisions of Article 10 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I would like to invite you to consider Article 10 of the Constitution, what it says. Article 10 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, says they will abide by the national values and principles of good governance, which includes human dignity, equality, and human rights, transparency and equality.
Order. Before you quote in extenso, I've been looking at this document tabled by the Honorable Junet. Having gone through it very carefully, it does not meet the test of a required legal document. It is not, some pages are initials, some are signed, some are blank. Areas where you required 2 signatures of a certain political parties, there's only 1 signature. Other required signatories as outlined on the document, such as page 28, are blank. And others on page 27 have the same fate. Others on page 29, same. So I want to direct and rule that this document is inadmissible, and you shall make no reference to it.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, that in fact the document that was tabled was worthless. Mr. Speaker.
Sorry, Honorable Chepkong, and going to the future, Honorable Junet, if you bring a copy of a document, try and authenticate it so that it can carry the color and force of law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for rescuing us from what Honorable Ambai has sought to put us into. Mr. Speaker, I would like to invite you also, and you have been invited, to consider Article 36 of the Constitution on freedom of association and 38 on the freedom on the political rights. I don't know what is wrong with the Constitution.
We can't
Honorable Mohammed has
it is expunged from the record, so we can't debate it.
You cannot. It's not. You cannot have a point of order against the Speaker. Where are you coming from, Mr. Speaker? I would like to invite you to consider the 2 articles that I've mentioned, together with Article 25. You have heard Honorable Cheng saying that he has moved out of that political party, Mr. Speaker. Article 25 of the Constitution protects and it outlaws slavery and servitude, Mr. Speaker. You know, you cannot come here and tell us that you want Mr. Honorable Cheng to be your slave or you put him in servitude, Mr. Speaker. That is outlawed in the Constitution. And so that argument in the first instance should not even be pursued in this House, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the person who is doing it is shame on you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The other one, Mr. Speaker, that I would like to invite you, except that there's nothing unparliamentary about English language. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you have been, except that now you have expunged this, so there's nothing for me to speak to about this as Mio. So, Mr. Speaker, with those very few remarks, in light of the fact that you have expunged it, it cannot be considered in this House. Declare Kenya Kwanza as providing the majority leader. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I've given. Yes, Honorable Junet.
Mr. Speaker, the ruling you have just made has a serious implication on the issue that we are debating, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, the only known coalition agreement, and it was demanded by the members here that we should table it, Mr. Speaker, is the same document that in your ruling you have expunged, Mr. Speaker, from the records of the House. So, Mr. Speaker, unless the House has another set of coalition agreement, the only coalition document that is registered with the political parties registrar, Mr. Speaker, is this one, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, no, Mr. Speaker, it's protected from Chepkonga, Mr. Speaker. You know, Chepkonga has been farming for 5 years, Mr. Speaker. He has just come back to the House. Relax, Bana. Relax, Dugyan. Relax, but I'm speaking to the Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
I will hear Honorable Junet.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, you know, we are a house of debate, Mr. Speaker. And we have to, you are the only one we can address. Yes. Because the ruling you have made, Mr. Speaker, has a fundamental implication on the issue that we are canvassing before you, Mr. Speaker. Because all our coalition agreement of all those 26 parties is based on that document, Mr. Speaker, that you have expunged today, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, does it mean that as far as the House is concerned at this point, Azimio la Umoja coalition document is not recognized in Parliament? Then we move from there, Mr. Speaker.
Babo Wino.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the internegram between Azimio One Kenya Coalition and the Kenya Kwanza is keyword, Mr. Speaker, in the apex of the law, in the supreme law of the land, and in the Constitution in Article 108, sub-Article 2, that was also read by Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. Mr. Speaker, the article is clear that the leader of majority shall be the leader of the majority party or coalition of parties. And going by that, Mr. Speaker, in simple terms, it is very clear that Azimio, kindly give me time. Mheshimiwa, I don't know why you are so excited. Mr. Speaker, going by that fact, it is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that Azimio One Kenya Coalition Party is the majority party in the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, going by the, just keep quiet, one. I know you know only was English, so just keep quiet. Mr. Speaker, going by the rules of interpretation, the literal rule, the golden rule, and the purposive approach, the facticity of the fact is that Azimio Alliance, Azimio One Kenya Alliance is a coalition, is the majority coalition party. Mr. Speaker, number two, we talked about marriage. Mr. Speaker, Azimio is a subsisting marriage. And in this marriage is a potential polygamous marriage. And Mr. Speaker, this marriage is not voidable because there was consummation in this marriage. Mr. Speaker, the person who presided over this marriage was overqualified, Mr. Speaker. And then, Mr. Speaker, the grounds for divorce, number one, is adultery or unfaithfulness, which we never experienced in our marriage, Mr. Speaker, because we campaigned together happily. Mr. Speaker, another ground is irreconcilable differences, which we never experienced, Mr. Speaker, in our marriage. And Mr. Speaker, a ground of insufficient or lack of finances has never been a ground. That our partners, having seen that Kenya Kwanza was forming the government, they ran away. Mr. Speaker, that marriage is not voidable. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about Article 36, as quoted by Honorable Didmas Baraza on the Bill of Rights, the right to associate, Mr. Speaker, there are limitations to the bills of right, including the right to life. Mr. Speaker, in the doctrine of necessity, in the case of the Queen versus Dudley and Stevens in the United Kingdom, Mr. Speaker, you know when these defendants were on a trip, a voyage, Mr. Speaker, as I finish.
The ones who ate a small boy.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the two defendants killed Mr. Parker and fed on him, ate him. Then, Mr. Speaker, in the High Court, it was decided that it was not necessary to take life. But upon appeal, Mr. Speaker, it was decided, they were vindicated, that it was necessary for them to take the life because either way they would have died. Therefore, there are limitations to any law, Mr. Speaker. Be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, our marriage was...
But the court said they should have cast lots as to who should be eaten.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you are diverting law. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I would like to say that this requires simple interpretation, and we've already been given direction by the majority leader and the majority whip, Honorable Junet, and the majority leader, Honorable Wandai, on the direction to take on this matter, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Ndindi Nyoro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I first want to thank the people of Kiharu for giving me another chance to come and serve them here in the August House. And Mr. Speaker, actually singularly thank them because they advised me not to have any campaign materials, that they would elect me without any. And they actually did that, Mr. Speaker. I also want to applaud the people of Kenya for voting and conducting our elections in a very peaceful manner, Mr. Speaker, and that is why we are all here celebrating our democracy. Going to the issue, Mr. Speaker, I remember very well when we were recalled from recess, Mr. Speaker, to come and discuss the amendment of the Political Parties Act, Mr. Speaker. We looked subdued then because we are facing people in this house who were chest dumping, telling us that they are the system, and their way was the highway. Mr. Speaker, we advised them that it is important that this House continues to make laws for posterity and for the good of all. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the bad law they passed, Mr. Speaker, has put them in the situation that you are in today. Mr. Speaker, the question before this House is on who is the majority. Which team is the majority in this House? And Mr. Speaker, this is very clear. We have Kenya Kwanza, where I belong, organized. It is a coalition of political parties. There are agreements, Mr. Speaker, of the constituent parties. We went to the elections, Mr. Speaker, and the parties that make the coalition of Kenya Kwanza emerged victorious insofar as majority is concerned. Mr. Speaker, it has been said there before, but it is good for me to put to record that UDA, the party I belong, we have 145 members in this House. Ford Kenya, Mr. Speaker, the SIBA party, we have 6 members in this House.
Yes, order, there's a point of order. Honorable Elisha.
Mr. Speaker, as one of the celebrated MPs from Game, I want to remind my brother of phonetics. You know, you can't use on or to. You must be clear on the language you're using, please. Speak good English, please.
Mr. Speaker, we may not have time to respond to every frivolities, Mr. Speaker. Ford Kenya has got 6, ANC 8, UDM 8, Mr. Speaker, Chap 2, PA 3, TSP 2, DP, MDG, NAP Kenya, MDDG 1 each, Mr. Speaker, and CCM 1. That makes a total of 179 members in this National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, that is already majority. If you add even, Mr. Speaker, the 10 members, independent members, who are currently leaning towards the majority side, Mr. Speaker, you can clearly see now we have almost a supermajority. But there are other issues, Mr. Speaker, insofar as some of the parties I mentioned is concerned. And I am going to the other side, Mr. Speaker, of Azimio, One Kenya Alliance. They purport to have tabled some agreement here, Mr. Speaker, which you have already voided. Mr. Speaker, an agreement signed on a blank paper, Mr. Speaker, at night in a dark room, where most of the material is not given to all the parties, Mr. Speaker, and under duress. There is no contract, there is no agreement that can be made in those kind of circumstances. Mr. Speaker.
Order. Yes, Honorable Babu.
Speaker, what Honorable Ndindi Nyoro is saying, Mr. Speaker, I know they are important and detailed, but the problem is that the most important parts are not detailed and the most detailed parts are not important. Mr. Speaker, it is very unparliamentary for him to act in a frivolous way, Mr. Speaker, by saying that the documents were signed in a dark room, Mr. Speaker. Did he see it, Mr. Speaker? That is out of order. Was he there, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, because I can see my time is already up, I call upon... Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I was just saying, Mr. Speaker, that the agreement, the purported agreements made on the other coalition, Mr. Speaker, they cannot stand any test. They were made at duress, again in dark rooms and at night, Mr. Speaker. Most of these people were given blank pages to sign, and there is no page with content that is countersigned by those signatories, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our country is in paralysis.
Ndindi, your time is up. Sabina Chege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity. And first and foremost, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my party, Jubilee Party, for nominating me to be a member of this parliament, and also to confirm that Jubilee Party is part of the Azimio la Umoja kwa One Kenya coalition. And Mr. Speaker, just to say that the letter that was there before about Jubilee, that was our internal affairs, and Jubilee is family in Azimio la Umoja. I just want to confirm that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the issue at hand is who is the majority in this House. Mr. Speaker, a lot of people have alluded about marriage. We all went onto a competition when we went to look for votes. Mr. Speaker, we had two handsome men, and each political party chose where they wanted to go. After the battle, which was a fierce battle, and very close to call, Mr. Speaker, we got the results. And Mr. Speaker, I'll say fortunately, the Azimio la Umoja coalition got the majority of members of this House, Mr. Speaker. As fate would have it, Mr. Speaker, when part of our team saw that the other side, they were rising to go to the House on the Hill, some of them, Mr. Speaker, ran away. But I just want to remind them, Mr. Speaker, that it is good once you are signing a document, please read the document and just know the content of the document. Mr. Speaker, I also want to remind them that for the ones who have left, yes, they might vote on the other side, but legally, they are with Azimio until 90 days are over from the date after the election from 9th. And after that, Mr. Speaker, I am part of the Azimio Council. They are all welcome to come and table their grievances. And we shall again consider whether the grievances are true, and we can let them go, Mr. Speaker, if they so wish. But at this point, Mr. Speaker, even if they go, Mr. Speaker, and some of them have gone, and we respect their decision. Nobody is being forced or coerced, Mr. Speaker. It's just to let them know that the document they signed, ignorance has no defense. Whether they had read or not, they are bound by that document, Mr. Speaker. And so Azimio Party, Azimio Coalition has several parties, and we are the majority. And Mr. Speaker, I know you have also received communication from the Registrar of Political Parties. So we are not disputing who the majority is. Give us a chance, Mr. Speaker, to come here and agree on the way forward, to form the House Business Committee so that then we can serve Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Mutuse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to address this House. This being my inaugural address to the House, like many have done, I wish to thank my people of Kibwezi West for electing me to represent them here under Maendeleo Chapchap. Mr. Speaker, you notice that our party, Maendeleo Chapchap, is among the parties whose numbers are being contested, and therefore we have a greater interest than many in the current matter. Mr. Speaker, as a lawyer, I know legal arguments follow facts, and therefore it is important for us to lay the facts bare so that when you retreat to make your ruling, it will be as reasoned as possible. It has been insinuated by our friends under Azimio that Maendeleo Chapchap and other parties only jumped after His Excellency the President was declared. Nothing can be further from the truth. Mr. Speaker, I will be tabling before this House a letter that was written by my party, Maendeleo Chapchap, on the 20th of April, over 100 days before the elections to the Registrar of Political Parties, in which letter we requested the registrar to supply us with the coalition agreement, the constitution of Azimio Kenya, and the nomination and election rules. Mr. Speaker, as it were then, a country that was run through dictatorship, a country that thought that the system is everything, and a country that disregarded the constitution, the letter was not replied to. Mr. Speaker, I will also table before this House another letter that we wrote to the Registrar of Political Parties on the 27th of April 2022, in which letter we requested the Registrar to find it, we communicated the decision of the party, the organs of the party, to be removed from the Azimio One Kenya Alliance. Instead, the Registrar told us that she was under instructions from above, as it were, that we cannot exercise our democratic right to move out of the Azimio La Kenya. I will table the documents. Owing to that, Mr. Speaker, therefore, it is not factual, as has been insinuated, that Maendeleo Chapchap, under which I am elected and the member for Machakos was elected, moved from Azimio One Kenya Alliance after the elections, because the facts speak against. Mr. Speaker, again, after the elections, and noticing that the majority and minority determine how allocation of committees and leadership in this House is to be determined, we wrote a letter to you, the Speaker, our letter dated 26th of September, and which was received in your office on the 29th of September, in which we restated that our numbers, the two elected members, will be associated with the Kenya Kwanza coalition. Mr. Speaker, I will also table that letter so that it goes on record. Mr. Speaker, in the letter we enumerated the circumstances under which our party was coerced to join the Azimio Kenya coalition. And we did state that we did not find, and the circumstances under which we were coerced to join could not legally stand, and therefore we wish our numbers to be counted under Kenya Kwanza. The question that we'll be answering is, when I stand here as a member of parliament and say I want to be counted under Kenya Kwanza, can somebody else force me to be in another coalition that I do not want? Don't I have a right under the Constitution to decide where I want to be? Don't I have a right under the Constitution to say where I want to be? Mr. Speaker, it has been put to you. It has been put to you, Mr. Speaker. I do not want to restate the Constitution because it has been properly stated before you. Mr. Speaker, it has been put to you that rights have limitations, and indeed rights have limitations. But when you sit to determine the limitation for under Article 36, Mr. Speaker, I invite you to look at Article 24, which says the test for limitation of rights. To limit a right must be limited by a legislation, and that legislation must clearly state the right which is being limited. Mr. Speaker, in this case, our good friends are relying on limitation under the coalition agreement. The question you will ask yourself is, can a coalition agreement limit fundamental God-given human rights? When you sit, Mr. Speaker, determine that I, Mwengi Mutuse, under Maendeleo Chapchap, and my colleague, Honorable Caleb, wish to be associated with Kenya Kwanza, and that's where our numbers should be counted. And we cannot be forced to be in a coalition that we do not want. Mr. Speaker, also, as you sit to determine, realize that the particular, and I know you have expunged from the record, so we do not have a document speaking to the coalition agreement between under the Kenya Kwanza. But I have seen in documents that the coalition agreement says that you cannot move until 3 months are over before the elections. Also, exercise your mind as a seasoned advocate that that time is going to lapse on the 9th of November, which is about 3 weeks to come. And therefore, it is anticipated, actually, people can move out. It is anticipated that people can move out. Mr. Speaker, yes. Mr. Speaker, we are making an argument and everybody will have the opportunity to make that argument. And Mr. Speaker, find that the requirement to wait for 90 days is unreasonable. Mr. Speaker, under Article 38 of the Constitution, the political rights that are given to the citizens of this country you are supposed to enjoy them without unreasonable restrictions. Unreasonable, mark the word, unreasonable restrictions. To require us to stay for a particular time when we are not there is an unreasonable restriction, and therefore null and void to the extent that it is unreasonable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to support that we are in Kenya Kwanza, and that is where our numbers should be counted.
The Member of Parliament for Mandera North.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the debate. For the record, I'm a member of UDM, and in fact a senior member as the deputy party leader of UDM. Honorable Speaker, the Constitution guarantees freedom of association and freedom of movement. You can at any one time associate yourself with any party or individual as you so wish. And the Constitution is the supreme. The Azimio Coalition Party, One Kenya, has what we call the council, where each member of their coalition is represented by one member of the party. For record, UDM is not represented in that council, and it is in black and white. Our party, UDM, if they say that we were part of the Azimio coalition, we contested in various and many counties. One example is in Siaya County, which is also the bedrock of Azimio. A member who was a candidate of under UDM has been called names, including hii ni watu ya Al-Shabaab, coming from Azimio. So that means we were not part of Azimio. That has been said, it's on record. So that shows we are not part and parcel of Azimio. We have moved away from you. Actually, we have run like Murife. It's not don't run, but we ran very fast. Standing Order 2B is very clear. And I want to remind my former chairman of PAC, Honorable Ondanyi, that it says the clerk shall obtain certified copy of coalition agreement, not a letter. What we have is a letter by the political parties registrar, but not a certified copy of the coalition agreement. Why is this agreement not seen in public? You have just ruled out that one that was presented to you. You said some pages are blank. It is very true. We signed a blank paper under duress, under coercion, under threat. You have actually confirmed that what Honorable Junet has presented is blank in some pages. And that is exactly what they presented to some of the members on 12th of March at KICC. The most important part is that we have freedom of association and freedom of movement. We are no longer part of Azimio because they never treated us as one. I've given the examples why. We're not in the council. During campaigns, they treated us as Mododoa, as my friend Honorable Cheng has confirmed. Our party, UDM, has 8 members in the National Assembly and 3 in the Senate. We are that strong, and we are fully in Kenya Kwanza coalition. We have signed a post-election agreement in broad daylight, where all the pages were signed, initialed, and I was present as a senior member of UDM. The one that we signed in KICC on 12th of March, we have not seen any of the copies, except the last page only had a signature. So whatever we signed is what now Honorable Junet has brought with some pages which are blank. That is hot air. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to confirm as the deputy party leader of UDM that we are firmly in Kenya Kwanza coalition, and we are no longer, or we do not want any association with Azimio One Kenya party. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Le Correre. Mheshimiwa, are you called Le Correre or Correre? Correre. You have the floor. Give the honorable member the mic.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, indeed, I want to confirm to this House that Jubilee is a member of the Kenya, no, please. Jubilee is a member of the Azimio.
All the honorable members.
Hold your horses, members. No. Honorable Speaker.
You will be heard in silence, honorable member.
Honorable Speaker, I want to ask my colleagues in Kenya Kwanza that a woman standing here is an independent woman. I didn't come to this parliament through some party waves. I created my own wave which brought me here. And I am in Jubilee and I am in Azimio One Kenya Alliance. And I want to confirm this, Mr. Speaker. You know, a lot of people have talked about coercion and duress. And they left me wondering, what kind of cowards do you have in this house? I mean, full men, upstairs and downstairs, talking of coercion. I mean, Honorable Speaker, was it at gunpoint? Was it at knife point? Could they scream for help? What exactly was the problem? And Honorable Speaker, a lot of people have been talking and making reference to this constitution. The same constitution these members want to define. Because we have been read Article 108 and 107. As to who is the majority leader, it leaves no doubt. It is Azimio, honorable members, until such a time when you can walk out of this marriage.